Welcome, everyone. It's Larry Johnson, your host for Eight Principles. And I have another really informative and interesting guest today, David Kotler, who is just take it a minute here. It's an insurance guru. And we're going to discuss all the ins and outs of insurance, philanthropy, how it affects nonprofits, how it affects the instigator, and how it can be used in a very powerful and productive way for both parties. So, welcome, David. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me, Larry. I'm good.
So, David, you have your own firm. Is that what this is?
Yes.
And it is. Let's see. What's the firm name here? The life
The life,
insurance
well,
doctor.
it's known as the life insurance doctor,
All right. So,
the LLC.
you have an MD?
An end date,
You have an MD?
an MD. I have a advanced degree in law and life insurance experience and analysis.
Well,
I don't know if
I was just giving you a hard time, Dave.
you're being facetious. That's okay.
Yes, I'm being,
Well,
those of you who know me, I'm always looking at the ironic side, this a little bit of sarcasm edged in keeps people awake, David. It keeps them awake.
did
Uh,
anybody ever tell? I remember an old girlfriend of mine once told me sarcasm is the lowest form of humor.
well, at least it's broad. People get it, you know. Too many people in our business, David, and I'm sure you've ran into some. Um, they take themselves way too seriously.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to say, God save me from nice people. All right. And because they're so mission minded, they're so focused, they find it difficult to invite other people into their tent so that they can really be productive. And that's sort of where I want to focus today. So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you come to be the insurance doctor?
Okay. Okay. So I grew up in a very wealthy suburb. We weren't particularly wealthy, but it was Shaker Heights, Ohio.
Oh, yes, I know Shaker Heights. Yes.
Pretty good demographics there.
Hmm.
And so my parents, my dad was in the food distribution business. His parents had immigrated here from Russia like in 1913. And like a lot of immigrants that didn't speak the language, food was a handy business to go into. And so my experience from a very young age was watching him battle every day. If it was the family or the truck drivers or the unions or the vendors or the customers or whatever it was. And he was successful. He was definitely a very good business person, but it seemed to me like a colossal hassle. And one of his very good friends from the old neighborhood, a gentleman named Howard Metzenbaum, became a brilliant attorney. And I was 12 years old and I was filing papers for him in downtown Union Commerce Building. And he was forming a company called Airport Parking Company of America.
Ooh.
And so
Okay.
while I was there, I got to see what's going on behind the scenes at this high-powered law office and forming a business, judges running around. He had judges as associates. And I said to my dad, I said, Dad, I really want to be an attorney businessman. That's my goal. And so when I graduated from Ohio State, I said, Dad, I'm ready to go to law school. And he said, Well, that's great, son. How are you getting there? And I said,
And he wasn't referring to arriving in a car at campus, right?
he wasn't sending me an Uber. They didn't have them then. So I said, okay, I'm getting ready to get married. I have to have a stable living. Will you give me a job and I'll put myself through law school? So I sort of teased him. He reluctantly said, okay. It was, I worked in the business prior to that, but, I don't think either of us thought that I would become a rising star in the food distribution
Well,
business.
David, sometimes when you work for your parents, it's really indentured servitude.
Well, I wrote a book about that. I'll share it with you.
Okay.
In any event, so I started out, and it was a business. We were doing. This was 1972, the fall of '72, and the business was doing around $500,000 in gross revenues. And like I said, my dad made a good living. He was a good business person, but it was a dog eat dog kind of existence. And I found out very quickly, why it was so compressed is because the products we were selling, butter, eggs, cheese, dairy products, we had some innovative products, but primarily they were commodities. And commodities sell by price.
Yes.
So I'd be fighting with customers for a penny a dozen. I laugh. I go to Whole Foods today. My wife, get the organic eggs. They're $13 a dozen. I said, we used to sell these eggs for 39 cents a dozen. Yeah, but that was a long time ago. Anyways, they'd fight for a penny a dozen. And I said, boy, there's no way I'm going to make any money in this kind of business. So I started looking for other products. Eventually, originally with seafood, but before too long, somebody pointed out, he said, hey, did you see that ad for Haagen-Dazs ice cream in the Neiman Marcus catalog? And I said, no, what's Haagen-Dazs ice cream? I know what the Neiman Marcus catalog is. They were selling it for $60 for 8 pints through their catalog. And I said, oh, that sounds like my kind of product. It's
Well,
not a commodity.
now some of us know Neiman Marcus as needless markup.
Well, they were a hell of they were a great marketing
Oh
organization.
yes, oh yes, they knew their audience and they knew how to pitch it.
I mean, those brochures were like selling tents and whatever. They had some very esoteric stuff. Anyways, that was like really sort of got my juices flowing for products, and I called up Ruben Mattis, who was the founder of Haagen-Dazs, and I said, I'd like to come and meet you. I'd like to represent you. We had not been in the ice cream business, but it's okay. I remember getting off the cab in the Bronx, and the driver said, run across the street, don't walk. And I got to the building, and they had just been robbed the night before. And that's where the Haagen-Dazs product was made.
Run across the street, don't walk.
Run, don't
It's like
walk.
it's
Right.
like getting off the Cross Expressway and don't get out of the car, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So long story short, um, he was willing to do a handshake deal. He says, I'm doing this for me, not for you. I want motivated distributors. And I don't want people that are already making ice cream, because then they're gonna push mine in the back. I want people that are motivated. And I loved his concept, and the ice cream was fantastic. And so that was really like our exit out of the commodity business. And that business grew to be a very successful business over the years. We added Ben and Jerry's, we added Dove bars, we added Good Humor, we added Healthy Choice, and then the death knell was Edie's ice cream. At some point I said, oh, we have all this other product and we're doing so well, but this would give us more volume. And so I violated the maxim that I knew from the beginning is, don't be in the commodity business. Half-gallon ice cream is commodity. So to make a long story short, we were very successful selling Edie's ice cream. We sold over 1 million gallons the first year we represented it, and we lost over $1 a gallon. And I lost the business.
Think about that. Sales went through the roof, profits went through the floor.
Well, like a lot of small to medium-sized business, at our peak, we were doing about 20 million of volume. They don't have really sophisticated internal financial controls. So as a distribution person, I would look at percentages. If somebody would have said, okay, percentages are one thing, but put a pencil to what's the actual cost to distribute that product. It's the first product that we had to share marketing expenses. Haagen-Dazs is word of mouth. Ben and Jerry's is word of mouth. Dove bars was M&M Mars. They do their own advertising. So we really had a lot of that, and it was a much bulkier, more aerated product. So there was a lot of spoilage and waste, and there were slotting allowances. When I came out with Dove bars, they were like, we got to have it. We'll put it on the shelf for you. Here was like, how much you going to pay us for a shelf?
It's like I remembered when I published my first book, and I forget the big company that distributes everything. Every book that is in an airport bookstore, whether it's Daniel Patterson or not, pays for that space. They don't put
Sure.
anything in there unless the space is paid for. I thought that was fascinating. Everybody pays.
Uh, when you start selling Costco or Walmart or those places, trust me, you want space, you're paying for it one way or the other. So, anyways, so during this 20 some year career that I had in the ice cream business, to get to the point of philanthropy and my personal resonance with it, is I became very involved with our Jewish Federation in Cleveland. The Jewish Federation is one of the oldest, but certainly by far the most giving per capita of any place in the country. It was just the culture, it's just whatever, how some of those things work out. And so in an area where there were 75,000 Jewish people, our annual giving budget was over $30 million, where you might have had in LA 200,000 people and their budget was a third of what ours was.
Yeah.
So it was really a quantum leap, and it was like a very, very interesting culture. And I was fortunate through the company being successful and me, donating money and being interested. I got to go to Israel 3 or 4 times. I met Begin, I met Sharon. I was behind the scenes in Lebanon during the 1982 war, trying to be a spokesperson for why they were there, and that the people that were there were very happy with us being there. And it's sort of like deja vu today, but that's a whole different topic. And uh, so again, I had a very successful year. Actually, I think it was Neiman, it might have been Neiman Marcus or one of those. I won a sport jacket that year that I sold 1 million cases. Distributor of the year. Unfortunately, me and 17 other distributors for Edie's lost their businesses that year.
Oh God.
Yeah, taking them on was like taking cancer. It ate away your profits. So I had to pivot. This was 1995. And my CPA said, why don't you go into financial services? And I said, well, I don't really do anything or want to do anything with stocks or bonds. It's just not interesting. But I've always found life insurance to be a fascinating product. And
Now,
I said,
now you had your JD at this time, correct?
oh, yes, yes.
But you stayed in the food distribution business rather.
Well, so yeah. So I went to law school at night. It took me 5 years. I passed the bar. I wasn't going to not take the bar after going through all that.
Of course not.
But at that point, it wasn't the fact, it wasn't solely the fact that I was making a pretty good amount of money at that point, but I really enjoyed what I was doing.
Okay.
And
All right.
like talking before about people with a mission, and I think that people that don't look upon what they do as a job, but as it's like something beyond themselves.
They're
And
the
for me,
lucky ones, David. They're the lucky ones.
well, you make your own luck too.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So
You're
then
not
now,
happy, you're not happy with what you got, then go do something else.
yeah. So then you're looking to pivot, and someone said, "Hey, what about financial services?" You said, "Hey, I'm not into the stocks and bonds and derivatives and all that good stuff." But you were going to mention insurance. Is that where you're going with?
Yes, well, see, in my glimmering understanding of insurance was that it was a very fascinating potential product. I didn't think, based on my personal experience, it was sold very well from the people that sold me some when I was in business. And I really wanted to connect it because I knew that life insurance had the potential because of the leverage aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
because of the stability aspect of it, because of the solidity of the carriers behind it, that it was a fantastic product potentially. And if it could be melded with very smart, sophisticated tax advice in the charitable planning arena, that was my whole mission in going into the financial service business in January of 95. So
Okay.
that was, that was my intention in getting into that business at that point. The other thing I really liked about it is at one point I had 100 people working for me. And people are your greatest asset, but they're also your biggest headache. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't have, and when you're a small medium business, we didn't have layers of executives and ER and whatever. So that was also appealing of like having strategic relationships, but not having a big payroll to be concerned about.
So you're into life insurance, and you're using it not only to build your business, but you're showing your clients how they can be philanthropic at the same time. Um, and I know that when I was in institutional work, life insurance was always an option for people who wanted to give it. And I know there's some pretty creative things that can be done too.
Very, very creative. What
So tell me about what I know you've experienced, and that is pushback from nonprofits. Tell me about that.
Well, before I get to that, I just want to make one comment and reiterate because it's to me, it's like so ironic, I guess is one word for it, is people in general have a hard time comprehending how you can give something away and end up having more money for your family and for yourself.
That is ironic, isn't it, how that works?
And once people understand that, that and I know you're going to say, and I totally agree with you, taxes is number 8 reason why people are going to give, but that's a very pleasant notion to have in your mind and to be able to describe where we know emotionally and we know psychologically the giver benefits more than the receiver.
Oh yeah,
That is my belief.
absolutely. They're the winners in that game, for sure.
It's better to give than to receive. It's for a lot of reasons.
Well,
But
it's biblical too, David.
well, I mean, yes, of
full of,
course, the
full of wisdom. Better to give than to receive.
core of it is biblical, and that was an adage that I was brought up with also. Um, but to go back, so anyway, so that I just wanted to make that point. So the pushback from nonprofits regarding utilizing insurance or owning insurance, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why nonprofits have a hard time with insurance.
Yeah,
Number one, number one, figure if 75% of the agents selling it don't know that much about it, how do the non-agents know anything about
that's
it?
right. That's right. I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So they don't understand it. They don't want to manage it. It can be a very uncomfortable product to own on big donors because like, hey, how you doing? Like, they ask me how I'm doing, checking on my policy or how am I doing?
Oh, David, I must interject here for a minute. When I was at a small liberal arts college back east, I was brand new as a new VP of advancement, and we were going over the budget. And I looked at this one line, and and they had budgeted a certain number of realized bequests.
Oh,
And they weren't sophisticated to have actuaries doing this. So I know this was just a guess. And so I said in the meeting with the other VP, so tell me, you know, you gotta contract with the mob to make these people die on cue. And they were like, they hadn't thought of what that meant.
I thought you were going to ask her like, did you have some doctors at the cocktail meetings, like sort of surreptitiously looking at the people and saying he doesn't look so well? Well,
Oh,
that's a little morbid, anyways. Um, yeah, so those and no great idea ever goes to insurance without it's sometimes getting bastardized also. The ability to use the leverage and to use it on behalf of charities is very powerful. But there have been times that it's been taken to too much of an extreme. I don't know if you remember when there was all these policies that were sold. I think it was like the big oil man, or there were like all these huge policies and whatever. But done properly, let's talk about how insurance just fits in so well with wealthy people's estate and charitable and tax planning.
mhm. Can you
I
give
mean,
us a simple example?
I'll give you an interesting example. You know how the rage has become, you know, would you rather have a Roth IRA or a regular IRA?
Yeah, Roth or IRA. Yeah.
You know, of course, everybody's going to say, well, I'd rather have the Roth IRA, but you got to pay a big tax to be able to get the Roth IRA. And so I did a webinar with an attorney that I do a lot of joint work with, and we showed how you can create how you can offset the tax that you would ordinarily that you would have to pay to convert an IRA to a Roth through some charitable planning, creating a deduction, enabling you to convert the IRA to a Roth.
Mhm.
And we end up generating some very large gifts for nonprofits through that.
The first time I heard about that being done was actually from a financial services man who was a principal donor at the college where I worked. And he had done this already himself. And he had presented this to the college. And I'm going, oh, this is pretty slick. That's the first time I ever saw that being done. And that was what, 20 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. There were some people that were way ahead of the curve with that.
Yeah, he's the one that advised me. He said, Larry, get out of that's see that 3B, go do something else, do this instead.
Um, yeah, there's that's one good idea that we've utilized. Just the regular. What I was going to say, we're so blessed being in America that in their collective wisdom, Congress legislated these charitable trusts and the way they work back in the 50s and the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it because they recognize that for every dollar that goes into a personally run or managed charitable account is 4 times as effective as the government spending money to combat some of these problems.
Let's I want to emphasize that, so that for every private philanthropic dollar that's invested, that is a 4x effort over any money that government would spend to address the same issue. Period. 4x.
At least 4x, I think, and I think that's what donors are looking for today, isn't it? They want to have meaning to their gifts.
Well, and they always have, but I've noticed that as I've gotten older, that when I first got into this business, you didn't really get the return questions unless you were talking six figures. But now you're getting those questions from people for gifts for $50. I mean, they're a lot more focused on that issue than they were when I first got into this. Yeah, you rarely got questions like that for anything under six figures.
Interesting. And of course, 6 figures years ago was like 7 figures today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing how that happens, isn't it, David?
Yeah.
Inflation.
Back to the dozen eggs.
Well, one thing that's very easy for any nonprofit to do is to be the beneficiary and owner of a paid up insurance policy. Um, that the donor.
Let me give you another great idea for nonprofits. Actually, thank you for reminding me. So, the nonprofits can take fully paid up policies. You have those potential management issues, and you have those potential, those that little tension between the donor knows you got a policy on him, whatever, that type of thing. But I've seen utilize something very, very interesting, which is much more effective, in my opinion, is that if a potential donor has a life insurance policy, and I'm talking general parameters, there's something called life settlements. They've been very, very heavily publicized on TV. There's a Coventry that does a lot of TV advertising. Abacus, there's various companies that do advertise to consumers. Hey, if you don't need your policy anymore, we'll buy it from you. So there's this third party market for policies that are policy owners can't afford them, they don't want them, they don't need them, whatever. They've been shocked that their costs have gone up, but any one of a dozen reasons why it could happen. And the number of these policies, Larry, that lapse each year, senior owned policies that lapse each year, are in the millions. Millions of policies are lapsed. And something like 90% or 95% of those policies are lapsed without creating any value for the person that owned the policy, or value that could go to a nonprofit charitable organization that somebody would like to benefit.
Everything just went back to the issuer. That's it.
It just lapsed. Yeah. It's just, hey, let's put another floor on our building on Fifth Avenue, because when you go to look at any major city, who has the most expensive real estate of anybody as a class? Insurance carriers.
Well, for many, I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and for many years, the two largest buildings in the city were insurance companies. Now, to be sure, it was sort of an insurance center, but still, the two huge, by a factor of four, they were insurance companies.
Go to San Francisco, go to New York, go to Washington, go to Chicago. I mean, it doesn't matter what city you go to. It's the same old story. Is insurance companies are very, very profitable, most of them, if they're run right. And so these policies have value. Look at the amount of money that is being wasted. Money that could be reducing Social Security. Money that could be helping people with their medical expenses. Money that could be helping people with their donative intent. And the beauty of selling the policy before you donate it is, let's think about it. So with the nonprofit, let's see, I can get a policy. I'm a little nervous. Is it really fully paid up? Do I got to track it? Do I got to check it? Is it really going to be there? Is there more premiums that have to come in on it? And it's an if come to a degree, but they rather have cash. I mean, that's a pretty stupid question. It's a pretty simple answer.
Yeah.
Of course, they'd rather have cash. So by the donor selling that policy first, not only is he enabled to give cash to the charity that can use it today. Oh, well, let's think about another thing. The donor is going to get a bigger deduction because the cash selling the policy is going to generate a larger amount of money than the interpolated terminal reserve of the policy, if you can figure that out if you're talking to the carrier for a few months.
So, and the other thing I want to is that when you sell an insurance policy, correct me if I'm wrong, that is not a taxable event, correct?
Well, it is not taxable to the point of your basis.
Okay.
Your basis, they simplified it. It used to be much more complicated. Your basis is determined by the total amount of premiums you have paid into that policy.
Okay.
Plus whatever, if you had other expenses, whatever, those can be offset against what would be a long-term capital gain, presuming you're selling a policy which you've had at least 2 years, which is what it should be. So it's ordinarily not taxable. The other beauty of settlements is you can actually bifurcate your benefit. You could get, if you wanted to, you could get cash up to the point of your basis, and you could have death benefit for your family for the remainder, whatever. So there's a lot. It's a very creative product. Again, to go back to life insurance being very creative, using leverage, but that is a huge, I mean, if you've got a big platform and nonprofits understand this, it's such a potential source of cash for them and benefits to the people that own these policies that are lapsing them without any benefit. And they're lapsing them because it's like people don't understand that, yeah, I can give away money and I'm gonna have more money. They don't understand they could sell their policies.
So you work primarily from the holder end, the client end, the philanthropist.
Yes.
How would you suggest that a nonprofit development officer broach the subject? Now, I know what I would do, and that is first determine what it is that the philanthropist would like to accomplish, and then what is the vehicle for them to accomplish it. And let's say that one of those vehicles could be insurance. I mean, some people, as you said, when you bring up the idea of insurance, it's like, oh, you want me to be checking out here by 4 o'clock today? I mean, what is it? So
Well, I would think it's a great question you're asking. I would think that if the whatever I get, what do you call the soliciting departments, whatever you call the people in charge of soliciting gifts,
yeah, it's the development department, David.
development
It's
department
a nice
should
euphemistic word. All right.
should be made very much aware of the various potential sources of gifting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they were aware, if they had a little checklist and sort of like, okay, so the person's coming and they say, well, I'd like to make a gift. Okay. We have a lot of experience. We'd like to make it as painless and easy for you as possible. And that would be one of the have you ever considered the fact that if you own any insurance that you may not want or need anymore, that can be the basis for a gift, which could be a cash gift for us? That simple question could unlock a lot of dollars
Well,
and
it
help a
is
lot.
because then you're tapping liquidity that the donor doesn't even know they have.
Exactly. I gotta go back to a painless gift.
Mhm. Mhm. Because I mean, I've met donors who would like to do X, Y, or Z, but they're cash constrained one way or the other. And so you have to be more creative in satisfying those goals for them. There aren't that many people in the world, David, that can sit down and make a 5-year pledge for $20 million. There aren't that many who can do that. And even they aren't totally liquid. They have to create it out of other assets.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, and so I've given you two sort of examples of how life insurance could be used. There's a whole bucket of examples which entail sophisticated tax planning, charitable trusts, and life insurance. So I'm not ignoring those. Those can be the source of major gifts.
Yes.
And that should be something that there should really be more awareness, I believe, and more utilization of life insurance in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I know we've used it when I was in the college in higher education. It was often used as a way to replace money that was moved to some other place, so that it was self-funding, or then the donor didn't lose anything. It's all David, it's perfectly legal. It's wonderful. It's almost sleight of hand. I mean, it's almost spooky,
People go, really? Wait a second. Really? Like,
but it's true. It's true.
I know. You get that. There was another great idea that we did for a little while. I don't think it's still, but this was where a nonprofit would issue a bond, and the potential donor would buy the bond, but they would buy it uh, so that it would be utilized in a trust that would give them a good return, a good tax-free income. They put the bond in a charitable remainder trust, but then they would nominate the hospital or the nonprofit that created the bond to be the ultimate beneficiary of the bond.
Very good. Very good.
That was pretty good too.
So let's talk about infrastructure. Um, you know, the sense I get from you is that in order for a nonprofit to take advantage of this, at least at the front end, it doesn't require a great deal of infrastructure on their part.
It requires someone very knowledgeable in the area.
It requires knowledge, not extended infrastructure or special licenses or permits, or
No, right. If they're working with somebody who's really knowledgeable from the insurance side of things, they're not selling anything anyways. They are just trying to create a win-win. I mean, that is sort of my mantra in business is
yeah,
how can we create a win-win-win? We want to win for the clients. we want to win for the professionals that are involved in it, but they're way on the side. But we want the win for the nonprofits.
Well, the only loser in that case is the tax man.
We like that. We like them losing.
And I don't think many people would have a problem with that. No, no.
No, right, right.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to add? This has been delightful. The time has just flown.
Just that I'm happy to consult with anybody, any nonprofit about any of these ideas or and certainly offline, I want to learn. I really have a lot of regard and respect for what you've done in your career in terms of securing all these major gifts. I think it's, I know taxes is not the taxes can be the lubricant a lot of times or the motivator, but I think that all these intangibles and tangibles should be melded together. But I would love to be a resource because my mission when I got into this business was to increase philanthropy.
So, if someone wanted to contact you, what would be the easiest and simplest way to do that?
Well, go to my website. It's called the lifeinsurancedr.com, life insurance doctor. To answer your original question, did I go to medical school or did I go to school? Actually, it was this attorney that I've done so much work with. He started telling his clients after he saw the magic that we did in analyzing, saving, burying, everything to do with insurance. He says he's like a doctor. He says, you got to talk to the doctor. I said, wow, I like that name. Can I use that name?
So that's the insurancedr.com.
Yeah, doctor was taken. So it's lifeinsurancedr.com.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Well, I want to thank you for taking your time to do this here today, David. Thank you very much. It's been a delight.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm on LinkedIn, David Kotler, you guys got my name, but the website, I'm pretty findable and happy to be of service because
Thank
that
you.
is my mission to increase philanthropy.
Well, everyone, I've had a delightful time with David. I've learned a lot. I'm going to ask him some things offline, by the way, too. But next time we'll have someone else in another aspect of philanthropy. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Larry.